Hi, welcome to the how-to video for WPL's candle take and make. My name is Jim. You might recognize me from the library. Today I'm going to be making a candle using the same supplies that you'll be getting in the take and make. This is my first time making a candle, so hopefully it goes well, and we can learn together if something doesn't go well. So let me just quickly go over what I have as the setup here. On the stove here I have just a pot with some water in it, and the water is boiling right now. And there's actually a trivet in there that's pretty important because I'm going to be using a different pot, and I don't want that pot to touch the bottom. So ideally, in fact, it would be better to have a double boiler, like if you're making chocolate or something. But as long as you have something that you can use to melt the wax in, it doesn't touch the bottom of the pan, you're fine. Some people even like to use just like an empty tin can, but if you do that, of course, you'll want to wear gloves because it'll be hot. So what I have over here on the table is I have the pots with the soy wax in it, and it's actually started to melt a little bit because I placed it in the pot for about 5 seconds and it started to melt. So if you see it kind of sticking together, that's what's going on. I have the tin, which you'll have in the kit. I have the wick that you'll have in the kit. These are chopsticks that I'm using to hold the wick in place. We won't provide you with chopsticks, but you can either, you could also have another person just stand and hold the wick in place, or you could make something of your own. I have another chopstick that I'm going to be using to stir the dye into the wax. And speaking of wax, this is the little piece of wax, just like the one you'll get. This is supposed to be aqua, I think, so we'll see. And then I have a little Pyrex measuring cup that I'm going to be using to transfer the wax into before it goes into the container, because this has a little spout on it, which will, hopefully keep us from making any giant messes or anything. And this is digital thermometer that I'm going to be using just to make sure the wax doesn't get too hot. This is not a lot of wax, so it should melt pretty quickly. So I'm going to just go ahead and turn on the thermometer and then put the wax in the other pots. And as soon as it starts to melt, just measure the temperature. Once it gets to probably 120, 130, something like that, when it melts, really, I'm going to go ahead and put the coloring into it. This soy wax is supposed to be good to go at 160 degrees Fahrenheit. The coloring dye might take a little bit longer. We'll see. So here we go. Hopefully this won't take too long. This pot is actually floating on the water, and that's perfectly fine too. There's a little bit of bubbling going on, so if that bothers you, you can, just pick up the pot. It's just the air, or, not the air, the water vapor that's bubbling up around it. It's already starting to melt a good bit. If I had used a smaller pot, it probably would have, possibly might not have floated in the same way, or maybe a heavier pot. So keep that in mind if you want to do it this way. So I don't know if you can see, but the wax is probably about half melted at this point. And one thing that I did was, just to be safe, is I heated up the Pyrex. I put it in the microwave for a couple minutes with water in it just to get it a little bit hot. So just to be sure, it should be totally fine with the heat. We're almost completely melted now, so I'm going to go ahead and see what we're doing with temperature. So it says 145. I'm actually going to take it out for just a second so that I can add my coloring wax and get my chopstick just to stir. So the coloring wax is actually, as soon as I put it in, it started turning a nice green color, which is cool. So the colors are supposed to be, represent part of the summer library program's theme. which is reading colors your world. Unfortunately, the tins that we have, they're not see-through, so if you want to see the color of your candle, I guess you'll just have to look at it from the top down, but that's fine. It's turning a nice green color. And right now, I'm just kind of holding it above the water because I'm letting the steam do everything right now because I don't want to overheat this. I want the wax to be melted, but not too hot. Because just as long as it's melted, that's all we need. And I was afraid that the coloring dye might have a lower melting temperature than the rest of the wax, which I think might be the case, but it's definitely melting, so we're fine. And so this is a little bit of a test run, so you might actually end up with a smaller piece of dye in your kit, because this might end up being too much color. I don't think it's going to be not enough from the way it looks right now. It's a very vivid green color. I'm just right now just making sure that the wax dye is mixed in well, so there aren't any weird streaks or anything. It's a tiny little piece that's not melted yet. In fact, I could probably just take this off and it would be fine because I don't think this wax is going to congeal anytime soon. The chopsticks are really good for this. What I've read has said that wood or metal is better for this than plastic or something. So this chopstick is actually working really well. You could also use like a wooden spoon or a little wooden spatula or something. So it looks like it's pretty well mixed right now. I'm going to actually turn off this burner so it stops boiling the water. We're all melted. It's like a consistent color if you want to see a nice green color. So I'm going to do this quickly. I'm going to move over to the table. And I'm starting to think that I should just pour this directly from the pot because I think it'll be fine. In fact, I think I am going to do that. So I'm just going to hold this in place because as soon as that goes in there, the wick is going to be set. So here we go. And it was fine. Everything was fine. No catastrophe with the wax. But, do whatever you think you need to do to be safe. I also just didn't want to waste any wax. So this looks good. And so it's actually very liquidy, so I'm probably just going to make sure that the wax is in the right place and then let go. So we should be able to just wait it out at this point. The wick is on the bottom in the middle, which is how we want it. I'm not sure if it's better to cut the wick before we do this or after, but in this case we're going to be doing it after because I chose to not cut it. Not cutting it made it a little bit more unwieldy in terms of getting this exactly where I want it. Oops. So this will probably stay pretty liquid for a while, so I'm just going to, you can always just check it to make sure that the wick is where you want it. You can actually buy little metal spacers that you can put on top, and it will hold the wick exactly where you want it. If you're going to be, starting a candle making business, maybe you might invest in one of those. But for me, I'm just using chopsticks that came with some Chinese food, and works fine. And as it starts to cool, of course, as wax does, it will not be see-through anymore. And so I just want to make sure that it is in a good spot before I, go back to the circulation desk to help someone. And I think it looks like it's in a great spot right now, so I think I'm just going to let it be for now, and maybe we'll come back here and show you what it looks like when it's all cooled down.